Hello, everyone. James Wilson here. And if you've listened to my videos before, you know that I've been doing a lot of political videos over the months for almost a year now, actually. And I've been trying to really get an idea of where was there cheating somehow in the election. And I know this is an extremely old topic, but I still just, I did not know what the truth was. I felt that there was, but then I looked at it, it's like, oh, maybe not. Everyone's saying, a lot of people saying that there was no cheating, and then some people says, oh yeah, there is cheating, and all this kind of stuff going on. And so I created, I guess you want to call it an experiment on numbers. And it took me a lot of time to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and share with you how I feel about this. So I've heard, people saying that they ship votes from New York to Pennsylvania, and how people were filling out ballots and yada 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 in certain states. And they say, oh, that's fake news, that's been proven to be wrong, whatever. All I can go with is raw data. All I can go with is yeah, you can look at this guy and say he looks very innocent, when he talks about shipping votes from New York to Pennsylvania. But you don't know for sure. So I did some calculations based on raw data on the 2016 versus the 2020 election. I actually calculated it in this percentage difference calculator. And what I did was I took a look at all the states that were considered swing states. So this is supposed to be red, but it's pink. But these are red Trump states, and I did break them up. But there's 12 swing states, and Biden won 7 of them, and Trump won 5. And how I determined that these were swing states was a couple of things. Number one, how competitive was the polling? Where there's some polls that showed a tight race. And number two, the final result, obviously. If one of those is accurate, then I'm going to put it as a swing state. So, Minnesota was considered a swing state. Obviously, the final result wasn't quite as close. But some of the polling had it very competitive, so I added it in there. Now, a state like New Hampshire over here, to some people it was a swing state, but when you looked at the polling and you looked at everything, the polls were almost double digits, if not double digits, and Trump lost it by a lot. So really, honestly, it was not a swing state. And so these are the states I'm going to talk about. Now, what is C? C is the control group. C is the 38 other states that are not considered swing states. And obviously the blue states were swing states that Biden won, and the red or the pink, whatever you want to call it, are swing states that Trump won. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to compare the numbers in the voting. It's called the voting turnout percentage difference from 2016 versus 2020. And as you can see, I had some scribbly lines here. I broke it up into two sections. You have the north section, you have the south section. And this is one of the things that I've decided to do to give you an idea of what's going on. These states up here, their population shift percentage is very similar. And in the South, obviously Texas and Florida are extremely high. Arizona, it's known that people are moving there. So those 3 states are extremely high. But in the South overall, more people are moving to the South compared to the North. They're moving out of here to move down here. And you don't see, when you look at population shifts, you don't see, people moving to Michigan from Ohio or Pennsylvania. You don't see, these population shifts are similar. And so this was something I wanted to talk about. Okay, so with that in mind, I separated the two because in the North, the voter turnout should be less than in the South because people are moving to the South. I mean, that's common logic. So I separated the two for one half of the experiment that I did. So let's go ahead and just dig deep into the raw data. So how I calculated this. Okay, so how I calculated this. So this is how I look at here. Quadrant 1. Quadrant 1, if you look at it, Quadrant 1 is the North, or the Rust Belt, if you want to call it. And what I looked at is the total amount of votes in 2016 versus the total amount of votes in 2020. And then it gives you a percentage. All I do was I put it in this computer database. I didn't calculate it myself. I'm not going to take that long to do it. But you will see that in all of the states, the voter turnout is higher. The total amount of votes in 2020 is higher than in 2016. So when you look at this, what I'm trying to look for trends within this quadrant. This is the North where people are moving out of, and where the population shifts are similar as far as a percentage is concerned. So from a logical perspective, the numbers should be randomized. It shouldn't be uniform like this. Ohio should have just as high of a turnout as Michigan, and vice versa. And may be off by a point or two, but when you look at the actual percentage, you will see that it's much less in Ohio. And I'm going to talk about that. So when you look at these numbers, it's ranked from number 1 to 6. Michigan has a higher turnout percentage when you compared to 2 elections. Biden won it by 2.78. And you go down to Pennsylvania, 11.46 is a lot more voting. Biden won it by 1.17. Minnesota, obviously 7.12. As I said, I decided to add it in there since some of the polling was tight. And in Wisconsin, Biden barely won. But when you look at the voter turnout percentage, it's less than Michigan. And then when you get down to Iowa and Ohio, you will see that the turnout was much less with Trump victories. And some of these pollings were competitive, and that's why I added those two in the data. But when you see this is uniformed. This is not randomized. You will see there's much of a higher voter turnout percentage in Michigan compared to Ohio. And you will see the margins of victory go down, well, with the exception of Minnesota, but they haven't voted Republican since 72. So even if you want to take that out, that's a deviation. 2.78, 1.17 point. You see how it's uniformed, okay? And so when you look at the average per winner, I take these two percentages, add them up, and divide it by 2. In the Rust Belt section, Trump had a 7.52% difference as far as the turnout difference. It increased by 7.52. Biden is 11.68. That's a difference of 4.16 in favor of Biden. Okay, that's very interesting to me. How Biden had all those votes in certain states. When you look at Quadrant 2, which is the southern section, you see Arizona 26.12, and in Texas is 23.13. Obviously, everyone knows people are moving to Texas like crazy. Arizona, I've heard it a little bit. Not so much for Nevada, but Nevada has a very high number, which is interesting. But look at this. Georgia and Florida. Georgia actually had a higher turnout percentage than Florida. Much higher turnout. No one's really talking about, moving from this state to Georgia. I mean, more people are moving to Florida. So to me, that's a deviation. I'm just going by what I heard. But when you look at the raw data, Georgia's higher, and then you have Florida and then North Carolina. But when you see the trends, you see that Biden pretty much is winning a higher percentage turnout compared to the last election. And then when you look at the average per winner, Trump is at 18.16, Biden is at 22.32. Look at that number, 4.16, the same exact number as the North, which I find interesting. Coincidence? Maybe. I don't know. So then you just ask yourself, well, this doesn't really, what does this prove? I mean, obviously the the states that had a higher turnout rate supported Joe Biden. Okay, so where are the votes coming from? So this is where you have to take a look at the control group. The control group is the other 38 states. Now, I didn't look at every state and then add them all up. All you have to do is just, I did a mathematical calculation. So in 2016, you add all this up, okay? It'll come down to this number right here. This is the total amount of votes in 2016 minus the swing states. It's 81,683,238. So this is the 38 states. How many people voted in the 38 remaining states in 2016? When you look at 2020, it's 158,064,402. So in these 12 states, you're looking at about a 10 million vote difference in 12 states. When you look at the final number, it's about 12 million in 38 states. Okay? So there's a 14% change. So this is the total amount of votes in the control group, which is the 38 non-swing states for 2020. So that's about 12 million vote difference. I calculated 14% change. So one of the things to back it up here, okay, back it up, you take the total average swing state vote. So Trump was 69.51 when you add all the percentages divided by the 5 states that he won, comes to 13.9. Biden, you take 113.67, that's the total percentage. You add everything up, all these numbers you add up. Divide that by 7 is 16.24. So what this is saying is that the swing states that Trump won, he won as far as the voter turnout difference percentage versus, 2016 versus 2020, the turnout was 13.9% more. Biden was 16.24%. We have to take a look at the control group because the control group, which is the other 38 states, would give you a better idea of what's going on. So, as I said, the control group was 14%. So when you look at the data, you will see that Trump's numbers in the 5 states he won and the control group, as far as the turnout percentage, is extremely identical. This number here should be identical, but it's not. Biden is a 2.24% difference. That means in the states that he won, in those 7 states that he won, the deviation is 2.24%. That means that 2.24% of the people, the voting increased by 2.24% once you compare it to the increase in the control group. And so when you look at it, you may think, well, that's not a large percentage. But if they added votes, I mean, Trump, lost 3 states by less than the point. He lost one by almost about a point. So it would have changed the election. But you have to come with a conclusion. So the Biden swing states had 2.24% voter increase compared to the control group. That's what I come up with. So what is my conclusion? That's a fact. All these are facts so far. Conclusion: voter turnout in Biden states is inflated. Okay, there's a difference. There's a deviation. When you looked at the Trump states versus the control group, it was very identical. It was only off by 1/10 of a point. This is out by 2.24%. I mean, thinking it in my head, it's like 2,000 times more, But how did this happen? Why did this happen? I mean, Democrats did something in the Biden 7 states compared to the 43 other states. They did something different, folks. I mean, there's a deviation by 2 to 3 points. Okay. So, I mean, now it's like, okay, everything that I've said so far has been a fact. 100%. The numbers don't lie. Now it's just like I'm thinking in my head, what happened? Because the numbers should be randomized. It should not